Starting right now, The Rita Panahi Show.
Good evening and welcome to the Rita Panahi Show. Coming up tonight, Victoria's Anti-Corruption Commission hands down its long-awaited report into the Daniel Andrews government and the United Firefighters Union. Michael Kroger and Michael Danby will join me shortly to discuss the day's top headlines. A leading child psychologist urges parents to stop showering their children with extravagant praise. Claire Rowe will join me on the show to discuss her controversial piece. John Hinderaker will have the latest from the US, including the socialist candidates dominating Democrat primaries. And later in the hour, Dee Dee Dunleavy will have the latest entertainment and royal news, including Rosie O'Donnell's unedifying meltdown, the latest one. And talking about lefties, tonight we hear from Kamala Harris, who still cannot believe that they got rid of the wasteful activist expenditure of USAID.
It's so unbelievable that they got rid of USAID.
But first, Victoria's Anti-Corruption Commission has found that senior members of the Daniel Andrews government engaged in serious and concerning conduct in its dealings with Union Chief Peter Marshall. The report was generated by an 8-year investigation into dealings between Labor and the United Firefighters Union during the 2016 pay and conditions negotiations, which included secret hotel meetings and 4 a.m. text messages. IBAC did not find corrupt conduct had occurred, but it did find that senior members of government acted contrary to established policies, procedures, codes of conduct and conventions in negotiating a deal with Marshall in 2016. And by doing so, the government placed itself in a position where Mr Marshall was able to exert extraordinary influence over the negotiations for both the CFA, EBA and the MFP EBA. Joining me now for more on this is former Labor MP Michael Danby and former President of the Victorian Liberal Party, Michael Kroger. Michael Kroger, I'll start with you. Years of investigation here, but they didn't find a smoking gun.
Well, they did. They just didn't find corruption because corruption is defined so narrowly. It's very hard to prove criminal intent in these situations. But no, they found that this government ministers had breached the ministerial code of conduct, secret backroom dealings in a hotel room to discuss agreements between the government and this union. I mean, Rita, the bigger issue is this. It's a scandal, another scandal of the Victorian government. The bigger issue is this. There will come a time in Australia where we have to have proper governance in the relationships between unions and the Labor Party. Unions who donate millions of dollars to the Labor Party, who are members of the ALP, whose members sit on pre-selections for these ministers, decide who goes into Parliament, and then front up to these very same ministers to whom they voted for or voted against and donated money to and say, oh, we want you to do this, we want you to do that. This is just a scandal that's been going for decades, and about time Liberal governments brought this relationship to an end because it smells something awfully bad, Rita.
Michael Danby, let's have a look at some of the revelations in this report. One of them is a phone conversation. Mr Marshall, in a phone bugged by IBAC on March 22, 2019, told a ministerial advisor this agreement was negotiated with Effin former Minister Gavin Jennings in a back room. It was endorsed by Effin Andrews and Cabinet. Do texts like this explain why Peter Marshall tried to bury this report? Because he did try to make sure it never saw the light of day.
Well, he was very anxious to see that the MFB's torpedoing of the volunteer culture of the Country Fire Authority was not revealed to the public, and how he had privileged access to do that. So Michael Kroger's right. It wasn't anything financially involved, not actual corruption, dollars changing hands, but it achieved a undue political influence. Now, I've seen Peter Marshall around these studios these days because he seems to have changed his colours a bit and was after Jacinta Allen. But I don't approve of what he did or Andrews giving him access to destroy the volunteer culture that we built up over so many decades in the country for Country Fire Authority, volunteer brigades.
Absolutely. Michael Corrigan, IBAC did find that Peter Marshall was afforded privileged access to senior government members, which in many cases was not disclosed to other key stakeholders, and that included the CFA and the Metropolitan Fire Brigade. And the CFA really, it's been decimated in this state. Morale is low now amongst the members.
Well, it is. I mean, and it's because these volunteers can't be unionised. It's why unions tend to hate small business, because the small business employees don't want to be members of these trade unions. The unions have dramatically diminished, had their numbers diminished in recent decades in Australia, for all the reasons we know. And the UFU did an immense amount to smash this small volunteer country fire authority because they couldn't be unionised. But this is what Labor do. And, you know, as Marshall said himself this morning, the United Firefighters Union have been members of the ALP for over 100 years. So, of course, they're going to get access. They vote at Labor pre-selections. They vote at Labor conferences. They donate money to the ALP. You know, this is what I'm saying, Rita. This toxic, you know, relationship has got to be exposed and put an end to, because it is smearing Australian politics and no one knows how deep it runs.
Now to Climate Change and Energy Minister Chris Bowen, who's offering businesses a 20% discount to install larger solar panels, all in a bid to prop up the government's faltering renewables target. Speaking at the Press Club earlier today, Chris Bowen also claimed that Australians are enthusiastic about renewables.
The lesson from the cheaper home batteries policy and EVs policy for me is clear. With the right policy settings, Australians will respond enthusiastically in ways which can add up to a globally significant outcome.
Michael Corrigan. Chris Bowen has also said the government will increase eligibility thresholds for its rooftop solar scheme. He is pulling out all stops to reach these incredible targets. And I say incredible, I could use other words that are not so complimentary, because these targets are going to do untold damage to our industries and to our households. They are just completely unachievable.
Well, they are, and the 82% target's not going to be reached in less than 4 years' time. This guy, he talks about people embracing things enthusiastically. What he's saying is to people like free money, people like big discounts. Yes, of course they do, Chris. They love a freebie, mate. You know, it's like saying they love the tax cut. Well, you know, who's against that? The problem is Chris Bowen has spent billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars on his mad schemes with no proper accountability. And Rita, the bottom line is this: how much has it achieved the executive? I mean, what is the objective here? The objective here is to keep the temperature down, right? To suffocate global warming. He hasn't changed the temperature one jot. He's cost us hundreds of billions of dollars, which our children and grandchildren will have to pay off. This happy-go-lucky minister, who seems to have no limitations to the amount of money he spent, would be one of the worst performing ministers we've had in the Commonwealth since Federation in 1901. Yet he continues in this job.
Wow.
Oh, it's time for him to go. It's time for him to go, Rita.
Look, I see him as the weakest link in the Albanese government. And you talk about what's his objection here. I think his objection is to get some sort of a role at the UN or some other global body. That seems to be what's driving him, because certainly it's not the economic well-being of Australians or Australian industry.
Where is the Treasurer and the Finance Minister doing what a Paul Keating or a Peter Walsh would have done in a previous Labor government, making an accounting of all the costs of all of these madcap schemes? He seems to go from one to the other. Different billionaires get subsidies for green energy. Then we have this scheme because he's not reaching some false target. Chris Bowen, you should look at what's happening around the rest of the world, where people understand that, yes, it's a good idea to have less pollution, but madcap quotas for your renewable targets are causing complete distortions in the energy market.
Well,
And
it's those
every other
distortions.
country understands it. Why can't we?
Well, it's those distortions that he just refuses to acknowledge. So he talks about how popular these schemes are, how popular it is to put solar panels on your roof. Well, remove the subsidies and see how popular it is. When
Exactly,
you are
Rita.
distorting the market, you can't say this is what the people are asking for when you're giving taxpayer funds to prop up these industries.
They should give him a harder time at the press club,
Oh,
the journalists,
they're all
the
on
time.
board.
You know, it's just. But where is Four Corners doing a comprehensive accounting of the benefits versus the costs of all of the windmills and all of the other schemes? You never see anything like
Michael,
that.
you must be mad. If someone suggested that at the ABC, they'd be marched outside and probably sent into some sort of re-education.
Well, that bloke at Channel 7 did a good program on that.
He did. Liam did do a good job on that one. Now, exclusive polling commissioned by the Herald Sun has provided an early read on Ben Carroll's chances of leading Labor to victory in November. Labor's primary vote has lifted 2 percentage points to 25%, but they still trail the coalition on 30%. And we've got One Nation polling 22%. Voters are still not convinced by the change in Labor leadership, with just 27% saying they trust Ben Carroll to act in Victoria's best interest. Michael Kroger, the state election looks like it's going to be a three-way contest.
Well, it looms quickly, Rita. November 28, I think it is coming around very quickly. But look, Jess Wilson's favourite to win. I think it's hard for Ben Carroll to win, although he could. I mean, you know, what Labor normally do when they're desperate, they play dirty and they give away free money. So he'll do a Chris Bowen, I would think, and just hand out free money, you know, because that's popular. As Chris Bowen himself says, it's immensely popular giving away free money. Oh, well done, Chris. So I would expect Ben Carroll to cancel this suburban rail network loop here in Victoria, which is a railway to nowhere, which is costing tens of billions of dollars, and that'll give him enough money.
Surely he can't cancel that given the expenditure that has already been sunk there. I mean, that is such a waste. It makes cutting up that contract for the East-West link look like nothing. We've spent billions on this project already.
And contracts with the companies that sort of hold them.
Well, what he could do, we could transfer the contracts to the rail link to the airport. So you were working on the SRL, now we're redoing your contract. Now you're going to work on this money guzzling project. Look, Rita, these people have no shame. They play a different game to us. What is $5-10 billion worth of the public's money if it gets in the way of an election victory? They'll just write it off as they do the money they wasted on the Commonwealth Games. I mean, it's scandalous that the Labor Party gets away with this and has the gall. This Ben Carroll has the gall to seek re-election. He was there. He's been in that parliament during the whole of these scandals and says, "Oh no, nothing to see here. I'm new man, moving along, nothing to see." I mean, it is a scandalous waste of money. But these people have no shame, Rita. So yes, of course they can cancel it, and I think they probably will.
But Ben Carroll is a new face. Most Victorians don't know him. According to that poll, not many Victorians trust him yet. But a 2 percentage point jump, is that an indication that people have got an open mind, that he is different to Jacinta Allen and Dan Andrews, or is that really not the sort of bounce you want to get when you change leader? Is it inconsequential?
2% may help him survive in seats in the outer southeast where the margin is 12% and they only get a 10% swing against them. As Michael will know, they need 16 seats, the Liberals, to win. And if you add 22 coalition to 31 nation, you get 52. But the question is, can you transfer those preferences? And Michael Kroger would know a lot more about that than us sitting here, but I'm not sure One Nation in the past have kept their promise of delivering preferences to other right of centre parties.
When the coalition consistently says we will not do a deal with them, whether federally or at state level. We've had Jane Hume just this week saying there will be no deal whilst I'm around. Jess Wilson's really made no moves to have any sort of an alliance with One Nation. So,
aren't they happy to get their preferences though?
They may be happy to get their preferences, but there's no preference discipline when it comes from One Nation. It's not like the Greens' preferences going to Labor. Those One Nation preferences I don't know what percentage, Michael Kroger, but a sizable percentage go back to Labor. So to count on One Nation to get you elected when you've treated them with disdain, I think there's a little bit of audacity there. And I think the Liberals need to read the figures. They need to understand that they need to do some sort of a deal, even if it's just a loose preference deal.
Well, I think that is what's going to happen. I mean, normally we'd get, depending on the election, 60 to 70% of One Nation preferences. Now it's a bit higher because Albanese is so bad and the state Labor governments are so bad that One Nation voters can't cop them. But you're right, the Greens' preferences now used to be low 80s, now they're high 80s directly to the Labor Party. But what we've said, Rita, is this, not that we won't have discussions with One Nation. The questions have been, will you form a coalition government with One Nation? And the answer is no. You can't have I don't think you can have a three-party coalition government, can you? We've got the Liberal Party, the National Party, and One Nation, who've never been in government. They've got one
but
person
why not,
as the Deputy
Michael?
Prime Minister.
They've never polled. They've never polled like these numbers.
I don't think it's a very stable government to be in government.
It
is enough to be part of a coalition. Obviously, Rita, what we'll do is do some kind of preference arrangement with them, so that we'll be putting the Greens last and Labor second last. Of course, we'll be supporting
but if they
One Nation ahead of those two.
But Michael, if you've got One Nation MPs who are being elected and you need their numbers, whether we're talking federally or in Victoria, and you need their numbers to form government, to form a majority, why wouldn't you do that? Why would you rule that out? And the political climate in Australia has changed. We've never had One Nation polling these sorts of numbers. We've never had this scenario really being a live possibility. So do the Liberals need to wake up to the 2026 political climate? Things have changed.
No, it's a bit more complex than that. Don't forget, before the elections, in nearly every case we're in coalition with the National Party, we have worked out our policies with the National Party. So when we hit the ground as a government, the two parties are completely aligned on policy, and the government is a stable government because we agree on policies. People are suggesting that after an election where we haven't shared policies with One Nation, where we may disagree on any number of policies, that we then go into coalition government with a party whose policies we may disagree with in many fields. That is a recipe for an extremely unstable government, which might not last one term, Rita, when you've had no policy discussions at all.
One term's better than no term.
You want the guts of it?
Otherwise, hand power to Labor indefinitely. Otherwise, hand power to Labor indefinitely. And you're going to see Labor winning elections with a primary vote of under 30%.
And Rita, the One Nation is polling best in the regions, and they may replace the National Party. So effectively, the Liberals' choice may be to go into coalition with One Nation or nobody, because the National Party may be wiped out by One Nation.
Well, I mean, the federal election is a long way away, but if the current polling stands, the Liberal Party has to rethink their current strategy. It is just not workable with what the electorate is telling them. Michael Kroger, Michael Danby, always a pleasure. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thanks, Rita.
Now, educational psychologist Claire Rowe has penned a piece in the News Corp papers this morning that has got parents talking. This piece has caused a lot of debate, with Claire encouraging parents to stop extravagant, unearned praise of their children. She says parents are confusing confidence with competence, and she writes, when did it become so unacceptable to be honest with children about what they're good at and what they're not? Somewhere along the way, we seem to have decided that encouragement means telling children they're good at everything. Claire Rowe joins me now. Claire, I love this piece. I'd argue having a generation of kids with big but fragile egos is going to cause all sorts of problems.
Hi, Rita. Thank you. Yeah, well, I think it already has. I think it has, with young people entering the workforce out of university, thinking they know it all with little or no experience. I think there's a difference between confidence and ego, because there is healthy confidence, but that's built on competence, right? It's built on having tackled things and making mistakes and realizing that life goes on. But ego is really different, and I think that's what I'm commenting on, because that's based on external validation. And in my column, I recalled as a young psychologist watching this mother just tell their young child that they were the best drawer in the world and everything they drew was fantastic. This kid's drawing was not very good. Like, he had really delayed motor skills, but he was great at soccer. Like, he was great on a soccer pitch, right? So I just kind of thought to myself, when do we stop being able to just acknowledge that kids have strengths and weaknesses? And what's going to happen if we tell kids they're exceptional at everything? I mean, the first thing is, I think they'll stop trying. I mean, if you're the best at everything to start off with, well, you're the best. And where is the motivation to put in the hard work to get any better?
Well, you've got that issue, but you've also got them being exposed to the real world without any resilience, because parents are so scared to say no to their child, to offer any sort of criticism. So they don't build that resilience. And you can't manufacture resilience, can you, Claire? You need to have it built up. So when you are in the big wide world by yourself, you can withstand someone being critical of you or demanding something that perhaps puts you out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Resilience is not something that we can hand kids overnight with our words. It's something that they have to develop, as you said, by experience. And every time a child solves a problem on their own or hears no or experiences disappointment, and they have to persevere, and they have to bounce back. It's a muscle that they're building. And I think, parents, I get it, parents want to naturally protect their children from discomfort. But like most things in the world, we have swung so far the other way. Discomfort is actually developmentally really, really important. It's how children learn, difficult feelings are temporary. And I always say to parents in my office, you've got 18 years to turn out a fully functioning adult in the world, right? And they come to me and the kid's 9 or 10, right? You're over halfway through, time's ticking. As humans, we spend a lot longer raising our young than any other species. You've got 18 years, and it's not to give them and prepare them for childhood, it's to prepare them for adulthood.
And we've got this in the schools. It's not just in the home. In the schools, you've got participation awards. Everyone gets a ribbon for just being there. And we've got this cotton wool generation that really doesn't hear no too often. I've heard arguments that leads to more bullying. Instead of actually making the kids a little bit softer and more tolerant of others, it makes them into little monsters in some circumstances.
Yeah, well, I think, everyone these days talks about that participation award culture. I think maybe the intention was a good one. We want children to feel included, but also children aren't stupid. Like, they know which team won or who was the fastest or who gave the strongest performance. Like, they don't need adults to pretend that everyone achieved exactly the same outcome. So, yeah, absolutely. And I think at the end of the day, then we've got kids who are really poorly equipped to be able to cope, to say, I gave it my best shot, which of course this is what we should praise, and you gave it your best shot. You're not a great runner, but that's okay. We can keep practicing. But someone else won, and let's celebrate them. So inclusion and participation, acknowledgement, great, but not that that everyone wins and everyone achieved the same, because that's not reality, and kids know that.
Claire Rowe, always love your insights. Thanks for your time tonight. Still to come, lefties losing it, plus the latest from the US, including socialist candidates dominating Democrat primaries. John Hinderaker is next. You're watching the Rita Panahi Show, and it's time for Lefties Losing It. Let's start with Kamala. She's back, and she's still shook that the Trump administration cut USAID, that fraudulent program that was used to run leftist activist projects around the world.
It's so unbelievable that they got rid of USAID. And you saw the recent numbers. As many as, 600, 700,000 people have died.
No one has died, Kamala. Calm down, love. And she's in terrible company there, pushing the false notion that USAID cuts are causing widespread deaths. Here is crack and hoe enthusiast Hunter Biden.
Let me tell you where the genocide is about to occur, and is occurring right now. Directly because of Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Donald Trump, under the direction of Elon Musk, ended USAID. And when I was talking about the good that the United States could do, it could not be more embodied than in the work that USAID has done over the course of decades.
Genocide, really. This is a man who was, along with Anthony Fauci, granted a pardon, a full and unconditional pardon by Daddy. Thanks, big guy. Now let's see what Elon Musk, who headed Doge, has to say. He wrote, worth noting that any USAID funding that appeared to have the slightest merit whatsoever for helping people in need was moved to the State Department. Only the funding where they provided no evidence at all for who would receive the money was stopped. But it's a genocide, claims Hunter Biden, really. The biggest grifting Nepo baby that has ever passed through the White House, and the most hateful, it seems. Listen to this demented diatribe about the Trumps. Hunter wants President Trump's grandchildren, even the toddlers presumably, to suffer. Meanwhile, Hunter and the rest of his family don't even acknowledge Hunter's own biological child. Remember Navy?
And as it relates to Donald Trump, him, his sons, his daughter. I mean it, all of them, the whole family, down to the grandchildren. I hope for the rest of time that I am on this earth, that their names will live in ignominy. And by the way, here's the thing: like, oh, this is going to get clipped, and this is going to be the thing, and you go out there. But let me just tell you something. What would you expect me to say? What would you expect me to say about a man that treats my father that way, publicly? What would you expect me to say about a man that treats my mother that way, that treats my sister that way? They stole her diary and published it.
Doesn't he sound just like his dad? And it seems the cognitive decline has set in early. Frankly, it is absurd to claim that Trump had anything to do with the diary of your sister being released. And that diary detailed, frankly, some shocking, disturbing allegations about the Biden family. Now to Francesca Hung, a Democratic Socialist, aka communist, a former Wisconsin state rep, who wants to be the next governor of the Badger State. And of course, the media are largely on her side, but this woman has got some weird ideas.
Global warming is an evil product of capitalism. It's wrapped up in buzzwords like technological advancement, market competitiveness, or my favorite, fiscal responsibility. What we've learned is that the climate crisis is America's steadfast celebration of white supremacy. It is a testament to the same values that motivated Jim Crow, enslavement, redlining, settler colonialism, and the violent theft of indigenous lands and lives.
Oh yes, she's quite crazy. The so-called climate crisis is a steadfast celebration of white supremacy. Interesting, given the biggest emitter in the world is China. Frankly, there was too much crazy to unpack there, but I'm sure this woman can't be detached from reality on all issues. Let's see what she has to say about law and order, crime and punishment.
We know now that the billions invested in the criminal legal system is not working. We are spending on incarcerating an individual more than tuition for UW-Madison.
Lady, are you okay? I'm all for lowering the spend on incarcerated criminals, but that doesn't mean I want them on the streets. This woman is such a crazy radical, she can't even give a clear assurance that she won't abolish the police. She was asked repeatedly and she refused to rule it out.
Do you still long-term want to abolish police, but ultimately?
You know, I believe that we have to be serious about public safety, and I'm going to be a governor that is more serious than anyone else in making sure that we are building systems of care.
The answer is no, Franny. If a journalist asks you, do you want to abolish the police? The simple answer is no, I'm not crazy. Of course I don't want to abolish the police. But she didn't say that. She had multiple opportunities and she won't deny that's the ultimate goal, because that's the ultimate goal and her nutty supporters back it. This is the modern Democrats, folks. They think we're in a climate crisis. They think a climate crisis is there to celebrate white supremacy and that we should abolish the police. And why not abolish Thanksgiving whilst we're at it? Now, Hong was asked about this in a CNN interview, but of course the question was framed to criticise Republicans digging up the past, you know, the ancient past in 2021. Caitlin Collins gave Hong every opportunity to back away from her call to cancel Thanksgiving, but again, she floundered.
He keeps highlighting and, you know, obviously likely would continue to do so before November should you win. One thing that they brought up as well was a post from you in 2021 where you said Americans should cancel Thanksgiving, should have done this in 1621. The post has been deleted. Republicans have been highlighting it. Do you still believe that Thanksgiving should be canceled?
I'm a chef. And one of the first meals that I made that was for the community when I was 16 was a Thanksgiving meal.
What? The answer is no, Franny. I don't think Thanksgiving should be cancelled. But she didn't say that. She talked about being a chef and what she did when she was 16. But of course, she does eventually give her real answer. She hates Thanksgiving and thinks it's harmful.
But Thanksgiving is also a time that's incredibly painful for many people in our communities. And so I think I wanted to make sure that people understood that there are multiple views.
Yes, there are multiple views, including your one calling for Thanksgiving to be cancelled. You know, the only thing that unites these radicals, whether they're communist, Islamist, climate cultists, is a shared hatred of America and the West. Let's bring in the Centre for the American Experiment president and co-founder of the popular Powerline blog, John Hinderaker. John, please tell me this woman, this absolute radical, is not heavily favoured to win the Democratic primary for Wisconsin governor.
Rita, socialists have been winning Democratic primaries all across the country this year, and it does look like Francesca Hong will be the Democrats' nominee for governor of Wisconsin. She's way ahead in the polls. Her main opponent has dropped out. The current governor and some other Democrats are trying to stop her, but it looks like she's going to win the primary. What that really means is that my friend Tom Tiffany, the Republican nominee for governor, should win the general election easily.
Well, you would hope so, but we've seen these Democrat socialists, aka communists, have all sorts of success in parts of America. Obviously, New York is where they've seemed to have really dominated recently. Who's behind them? There's the activist class, but are they getting money from rich donors? What's behind their influence?
Well, they have billionaire donors. You know, a lot of their donors are like ex-wives or widows of billionaires.
Yes.
And they're popular for whatever reason.
And George
among a lot of
Soros.
young people. Yeah, right. And so they have a ton of financial support. It's kind of funny because if you ever see a picture of a Democratic Socialists of America get together, a meeting, they're all white. You know, this is the whitest group in America. And there's a certain demographic, you know, that is just catnip for these young liberal people.
Absolutely. There's not much diversity. They talk endlessly about diversity, but when you look at their the support base, there's not much diversity. Now, this obsession with climate change, about deindustrialization, the doomsday scenarios we've been hearing for years now, the climate catastrophism, it's called. You wrote about that this week in Powerline, and I want to ask you specifically about these repeated claims that climate change is causing wildfires, forest fires. Are we seeing more fires and more intense fires because of man-made climate change?
Here in the United States, acreage burned by wildfires is down by 80% from the 1920s and the 1930s. And that is because we've learned how to manage forests. And even indigenous people knew how to manage forests. The only place where fires are up is California. And that's because California has turned forest management over to the environmentalists who do an incompetent job of it.
Oh, they do. They don't seem to have water to fight fires, so that seems to be a bit of an impediment. Now, I'm going to do a big WNBA expose on tomorrow's program. This league is rotten. I've been looking at it all week, John. It is rotten to the core. There appears to be one brave, principled player, Sophie Cunningham, standing up for women's rights, standing up for young girls. The rest of them don't seem to know what a woman is, or they're too scared to say what a woman is, including Sophie Cunningham's own coach, Stephanie White.
Men or athletes who test as biological male participating in women's sports. What's your personal stance?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I would say that I'm educated enough from a scientific standpoint. I don't ever believe that exclusion is an answer. I just don't.
There you go, John. She doesn't know what the W in the WNBA stands for. She works in professional sport, but thinks she's not qualified to talk about the fact that men are bigger, faster, stronger.
Yeah, Rita, the latest chapter in this controversy took place just the day before yesterday in my home city of Minneapolis. The Indiana Fever, Sophie Cunningham, and Caitlin Clark's team played the Minnesota Lynx. There were demonstrations and counter demonstrations. Pro-woman activists like Riley Gaines attended to support Sophie Cunningham, but the coach of the Lynx wore a shirt supporting trans players in her league. And the WNBA is resolutely in favor of men playing in women's sports, which is really perverse because if they actually allowed men to play in their league, there would not be any women left. So it's really a very bizarre situation.
It is, John. If they allowed boys, men to play, they would lose to an under-14 boys side. I mean, the difference is just so dramatic that they wouldn't have a league. So to have this crazy stance where they are denying biological reality, it's so self-defeating, but they are so ideologically captured. And I think it's a massive turn-off for sports fans, John. I think it's hurting their league as much as they think that this controversy with Sophie Cunningham speaking, she's the problem. I think they've all exposed they're the problem because they're at odds with the overwhelming majority of the population. This is an 80-20, 90-10 issue. This isn't a 50-50 issue.
No, it really isn't, Rita. I guess you could say in their defense that they're getting way more publicity than that league has ever had before. There's more people paying attention to it for better or worse. Clay Travis has put up $10 million to play a state champion high school boys team against the WNBA champions with a $10 million wager. And, he would win that bet. A state high school champion boys team would actually beat the WNBA champion. So this whole trans idea in that context is completely crazy.
Oh, it is absolutely crazy. I hope he gets that up because this league also needs money. Yes, it's getting a bit of coverage now, but last time I checked, they were making huge losses every year. So they're subsidised by the competitions, the men's competition that actually makes money. Now, John, you wrote another superb piece this week for the Powerline blog on the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Centre. They wielded such enormous power not too long ago. They still do wield some power in some quarters. But you say it's been a bad year for the group. Tell me about this publication of theirs called the Year in Hate and Extremism 2025.
Yeah, it's almost funny, Rita, because they say here that 2025 was a terrible year. It was the year when the hard right took over the American government and social media. It goes on and on. Well, it was a terrible year for the SPLC because it came out that this is the year when they were exposed as one of the principal funders of the same fringe racist groups like the Ku Klux Klan that they have been pretending to oppose for many years. So it's almost laughable to see them trying to carry on the same charade when pretty much everybody is onto their game.
Yeah, and their game included, John, paying for these race rioters, paying for people to show up pretending to be white supremacists, or even colluding with people, encouraging them to take part in these sorts of activities. And they were getting huge donations to engage in activities like that. Is there going to be some reckoning for them, some consequences? I mean, even this report itself is fraudulent on so many fronts.
It's really sad, Rita, because the SPLC has a great deal of money. They have it stashed in offshore bank accounts. They've also been sued a number of times. They paid some substantial settlements and judgments. I think the question is whether corporate America will finally stop funding the SPLC's left-wing propaganda. If so, I think that organization is finished, and I hope that is what is going to happen.
It's incredible that given what we know now, that any responsible corporate entity, any individual would be donating money to the SPLC. There are so many good causes, so many groups doing good work. Why you would give money to a pack of race baiters who are trying to incite, sometimes it seems like a race war, it is beyond me. John Hinderaker, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time tonight. Still to come, all your entertainment and royal news, including Rosie O'Donnell's latest unedifying meltdown. Didi Dunleavy is next. Welcome back. Now, I've got some bad news. Rosie O'Donnell appears to have abandoned plans to return to The View for its 30th anniversary. They just couldn't fit any more hate and hysteria on that panel. But that hasn't stopped Rosie from spewing her loopy ideas to anyone who will listen. Here she tells Kara Swisher that she will return to the US once Trump is no longer president because she misses her kids.
When he's done, because I miss my other children greatly, and I miss, New York and my life here. And I think it's very important as I get older for Clay to be around her siblings so that, when I go, they'll have a strong connection, stronger than it is now.
Good point, yeah.
Really, we make jokes here, but what sort of mother would separate a young child from their older siblings just to satisfy their irrational, seething hatred of Donald Trump? But according to Rosie and fellow lefty loon Kara, that's just great mothering.
I think definitely better parents. I think lesbians should raise all the kids, honestly.
I do too, frankly.
We'd have strong, confident men who like women and girls who are confident and also like men and women. And
exactly.
Yeah.
Lesbians definitely make better parents, they said. Well, not all lesbians, evidently. And of course, a Rosie moment on lefties wouldn't be complete with at least one utterly insane lie about President Trump. Here is Rosie's latest effort claiming President Trump is orchestrating assassination attempts against himself. This woman is sick.
And I think right now he believes he's in a reality show, staging everything from assassination attempts to everything that he has done. It's demented. I mean, it's really, really sick, toxic, and dangerous, and we're on the precipice of disaster.
Demented, sick, toxic, and dangerous. More projection there from Rosie. Let's bring in broadcaster and News24 contributor Didi Dunleavy. Didi, this woman needs help. I don't know if it's the sort of help we can provide. I think it's professional help.
Well, you can add egotistical to the list of qualities that you just shared for Rosie. Look, I'm embarrassed for her because she indicated that she was ready to go on The View's 30th anniversary show, and then it turned out nobody actually asked her, and they've been very quick to say, look, we haven't actually asked you yet.
Imagine being too crazy to be on the View panel. When you were part of the show, you were part of its rise to prominence, but you're now so crazy and absurd that even those ladies can't have you at the desk.
Well, she soiled the nest a couple of times. So the first stint that she was on, she had a clash with Elizabeth Hasselbeck, one of the co-hosts.
But Elizabeth was the token conservative, so that wasn't a surprise.
Exactly. But the second time, I think she and Whoopi just quite clash egos. And Rosie spoke on a podcast this week and she said that she thought that when she went on with Whoopi that they'd be like passing the ball back and forth to each other like Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan.
Oh.
Yes, and shooting goals and winning for the team with the big victory. So I think she thinks that she and Whoopi are these clever...
The problem is I think they both think they're
heavyweights.
Michael Jordan and there's only room for one Michael Jordan. And in fact, neither of them are Michael Jordan.
But what kind of ego do you have to compare yourself to possibly one of the greatest sportsmen to ever live?
Yeah, Rosie O'Donnell, the woman is delusional. Now, you mentioned Whoopi. She's been bragging about her paycheck from The View. Have a listen.
What do you love about it? Because, I mean, first of all, the show is called...
I love the check.
I can only imagine what that check is.
No,
it's
you
fabulous.
can't. No, trust me.
US ABC continues to back this show despite the fact that they have to regularly apologise, issue corrections for all the crazy things they say. But I've got to respect the honesty there. She does it for the check and it's a very healthy check.
Yeah, good point. I agree. It's one of the rare times that some honesty has come out of The View. Look, I don't know what she was aiming for there, whether she was joking or not. I think she was intending to, but it came across as arrogant and smug.
Oh,
and
yeah.
There's no disguising the fact that she's a multi-millionaire and that she's one of the Hollywood elite, and yet she's talking to American people every day who she cannot relate to.
And suddenly she cares about gas prices. When gas prices were at $8, $9. She didn't care about it then because Joe Biden was in charge, but now suddenly she cares about gas prices. Meghan Markle, she's your favourite. We have to talk about her 45th birthday. It went publicly unacknowledged by the royal family on Tuesday. Dee Dee, this has been talked about. Is it because she's no longer a working royal? She is still the mother of a prince and princess. Should they, I don't know, tweet it out something or put something on Instagram?
No. Look, it's not a snub. It's just protocol, and it's not right that they should be posting birthday messages for people who aren't a working royal. That's not what the royal Instagram is for. King Charles, though, I think he's a bit of a softie. I wouldn't be surprised if he sends a card. And
that card will end up on a Netflix documentary at some point.
Possibly. Well, when I say he sends it, probably he'll get one of his staff to send it. But I wouldn't criticise him for that because that's taking the higher moral ground. Kate and William, not so much. I'd be very surprised if they're in any sort of communication at all with Meghan.
Well, no. I mean, after what Harry wrote in his book and what we know about some of Meghan's antics, particularly against Princess Kate, I think some of those bridges may be burned permanently. Yeah. So, we'll see. Now, it was another birthday. Princess Beatrice had her 38th birthday celebrations, but they're going to be subdued compared to previous years because the York family is facing all sorts of issues. She is said to be planning a quiet gathering and has maintained a notably low public profile in recent months, Dee Dee. Yes, I think that's pretty clever. I mean, what are you going to do? Both your mother and father have disgraced themselves. It's not her fault in any way, but people will look at her and associate her with Fergie and the former Prince Andrew.
Yeah, look, this is her 38th birthday. It's not a recognised milestone, so I don't think it's any big surprise.
You can still celebrate 38.
No.
It's the last of your 30s. It's all coming to an end.
That is so like you to find any excuse to have a party. Look, it's not. 38 is not a celebratory age, I don't think, anyway. And I also take with a grain of salt this information that's come from an anonymous palace source. But there's no disguising the fact that she's had some outrageous birthdays in the past. Her 18th cost, we're told, around about £500,000. There were 500 guests there, including, in hindsight, this would be something you wouldn't do, have Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell there. But that would have been organised by Sarah, who loves a display of wealth and opulence and all that she...
Well, I don't know what these Nepo babies have done to be having £500,000 cost to a birthday.
But that would have been all about Sarah wanting to display how well she was doing. But it's, as you just said, Beatrice is at the moment, I think, a victim victim of are we allowed to say the sins of a father's bad decision making? And she herself has not been accused of any wrongdoing. I'm still not 100% convinced that she didn't know what was going on all along, but there's no evidence to condemn her, I think, at this point.
Yeah, Fergie's antics also highly questionable. Now, quickly before you go, we spoke about Ariana Grande earlier in the week. She's clarified the reason behind her upcoming break. She says the decision was made long ago and wasn't an impulsive reaction to concerns about her weight. But sources say her exit kicked off a terrible mess with her West End theatre show. Producers say they were given just hours' notice of the decision. Dee, it's undeniable that her weight loss is, it's dramatic. And it's worrying. She doesn't look healthy. She may be healthy. I don't know. She may be a very naturally thin person, but she didn't look like this a few years ago.
No, exactly. And neither of us is qualified to comment on her weight or her health or whatever might be causing that. But I did object to her representatives referring to the ongoing public scrutiny as though something the public has done, which has led to Ariana Grande having to step away. Now, if she needs to take a rest and take a break, good on her, and I hope she gets the help she needs. But as you point out, we are not blind. We can see she has dramatically changed. She has an enormous following, and if we're glorifying that sort of skinniness, that is not healthy for all the young people who idolise her.
Well said, Dee Dunleavy. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Rita.
And that's it from me. Up next is Late Edition. Good night.